Hello, Debbie from Roots Coaching here, an unconventional coach. Welcome to my DebTalk. Today we're talking about how to use stress to propel us, not to paralyze us. And this is the talk that's going to round off my previous 3 talks handling stress and mental health awareness. In the very first talk, we spoke about, let's start just opening this conversation. I made myself vulnerable. I told you that I've suffered from depression and generalized anxiety disorder my entire life, but I'm highly functional and living my best life. It doesn't mean that I don't get stressed from time to time. Oh, I surely do, but I have a good stress management program in place. And yes, sometimes I do feel overwhelmed, of course, but I'm very aware of it. How am I aware of it? It's because I studied it. I wanted to know, why did stress seem to affect me more than other people? And that information was given to you in the biology of stress. It looks at what realistically happens to your body when you're in that moment of stress. My next talk was about the 4 happy chemicals that we can use to mitigate the effects of cortisol, prolonged cortisol in our body. When serotonin and dopamine are high, cortisol is pushed down, and it reverses. When cortisol is high, cortisol pushes serotonin and dopamine down. So look for that talk where I spoke about serotonin and dopamine, and also oxytocin and endorphins. Now, to talk about how to harness this stress energy that we get to propel us and not paralyze us, I need to point out an absolute irony here. In the process of doing these DebTalks, I have stressed myself to the max. I've stretched myself out of my comfort zone, and my stress response has actually been huge. I was quite taken aback at quite how much I stressed about doing these talks. But I didn't let it paralyze me. I have let it propel me to do my very best in these talks. And so far, the feedback that I've got is phenomenal, and I really appreciate it. Thank you. So how do we start actually using our body's energy resources in the form of stress to propel ourselves and not to paralyze ourselves? Let me tell you a little story in order to demonstrate this. In winter this year, my daughter and I were out and about and unfortunately got lost in a CBD that was not terribly kosher. It was a CBD that I didn't know. It was 7 o'clock at night, so it was really dark because it was winter, and I was terrified. And what I had to do at that stage is recognize that my adrenaline is pumping, but I also had to cognitively take a deep breath, tell myself to breathe, and tell myself that if I use my stress response, I'll get myself out of this situation. So, first thing is breathing. Your body will sense the stress before you've actually got it into the logical mind. The limbic system will have sensed it already, and that those amygdalas would have hijacked your brain and sent off that stress response. I'm reading a book at the moment by a neuroscientist and brain surgeon, Dr. Jandal, and he says that in brain surgery, he doesn't put tape at the top of his masks. So with anybody who wears glasses, and now we're in a life of wearing masks, we know how uncomfortable it is when our breath starts to condense on our glasses. Now, the reason why surgeons put tape there is obviously so that they don't have the condensation, because they've always got the glasses with the lenses and all of that on. He actually uses it as an early warning system, so the no tape, as an early warning system. When he sees that first little bit of condensation on the tip of his glasses, he knows that he's going into a stress response and that something is happening with his surgery. The first thing that he does, this is a brain surgeon who's working actively on somebody's brain, the first thing he does is breathe. And he's got breathing techniques that he does with himself. But the first thing that we've got to do is get that 3-dimensional breathing going. Remember, the one thing that adrenaline does is that you hyperventilate, so you breathe very shallowly. So it's about getting your first breath in as deep as possible. There's also a lot of research that shows that when you expand your lungs to breathe deeply, it actually slows down your heart rate. So that's good as well. So you're going to bring down your heart rate. Now, the other thing that I did was I used my moments of hypervigilance to be vigilant in making sure that I was still trying to find the way out whilst looking around and making sure that I was aware of my environment and potholes that could stop me from carrying on my journey in a place we don't want to stop, etc. And my daughter said to me in the car, she said, "Mommy, am I the only one panicking here?" I said, "My baby, I am so panicked you don't know. But I can't afford to allow myself to be hijacked by that fear right now, because I can't afford to stop thinking. I can't afford for myself to fall apart right now. I need to get us out of here." And I duly did. Now, that stress response is the same whether I'm in a dodgy area in the middle of the night, or 7 o'clock at night, or I'm sitting at my desk, or I'm sitting in a boardroom. That stress response is going to be the same. And the process of harnessing that response, that stress response as energy to get yourself out of that, is pretty much the same too. So let's say you're sitting in a boardroom and you are starting to feel heightened emotion. The first thing that I want you to do is obviously breathe. And I always joke with clients and I say, when somebody says to you, take a deep breath when you are freaking out, what do you want to do? You want to clap them. There is a lot of value in it. Take a deep breath. Then I want you to identify the emotion that you're feeling there and then. Obviously, sitting in my car, it was quite easy. I'm fearful. I'm fearful for our lives. It's that simple. But sitting in a boardroom, it's not that simple to identify what we're feeling. We could be feeling threatened. We could be feeling humiliated. We could be feeling embarrassed. We could be feeling envious. There's a whole gauge of emotions that we could be feeling. So identifying it is not always easy. The second thing is acknowledging it to yourself. Sitting in my car, very easy to acknowledge, I'm feeling very scared right now. Sitting in a boardroom, is it easy to acknowledge to yourself, hang on a second, I'm feeling quite humiliated here, or I'm feeling belittled, or I'm starting to feel really angry. Is it easy to do that? To do that for yourself? Not a chance. And especially when we look at what emotions we have been told we're allowed to and not allowed to feel. But that's a whole conversation when we're going to do emotional intelligence. And the third thing to do then is to regulate your behavior. And sometimes it's just a case of breathing to get yourself out of there. Sometimes you've got the luxury of thought to be able to sit there and put it into context and say to yourself, is this valid? And put it into perspective. So many times I've had clients tell me things where they have been so upset. I sit back and I think to myself, in a few years' time, in a few months' time, is this even going to be valid? So context and perspective is really good. The other thing is to remember what you can control. What can you control? You can't control anything but your reaction to external stimuli. Let me say that again. You can't control anything in this world except for your reaction to external stimuli. So, sitting in that boardroom, the words that are said around you, that's external stimuli. You are giving it emotion, and that's what's going to lead to the behavior that comes out of you and the stress levels that are going to rise. So it's about understanding that this stimuli needs to be unpacked and thought through. I often say to people when they say to me, for instance, humiliation, oh, I was so humiliated. This is what happened. And I ask them to unpack that, and I say, how much of that is real? How much should you actually take on board as a lesson where you can learn from that? And often people say to me, not much of it. I say, then don't let it stick. Don't let it stick, and don't let it sit with you. It's words. It's somebody else's words that are said. Don't let it stick to you. Because what happens is that we let those words stick. And then there's a little thing called perseveration. What does perseveration mean? Perseveration means reacting to a stimuli that has already ceased. So the words are gone, they've been said, they're thrown out there, but every time you think about it, not only is it a thought process, your whole body reacts to it. So be mindful of that type of perspective that you need as well. What do you need to take on board? We don't need to take everything on board that everybody says. We need to critically look at it and then assess, how can we improve ourselves, or what do we need to leave behind? So breathing, context, perspective, really, really important. And then also getting to know yourself. I was doing some public speaking the other day, and I'd invited a friend to come and join me. And she said to me, gosh, you pace up and down quite a lot when you talk. I said, I know. That's my way of getting rid of my nervous energy, because public speaking, like speaking on a video, really makes me nervous and stressed. So it's getting to know yourself. Then putting your stress plan in place. Because remember what I said right at the beginning of all my talks, is that once you've had that stress response, we're supposed to go back to homeostasis. We're supposed to go back to a comfortable space of being relaxed, and we don't. So it's making sure that we put in all of those stress management tips that we've learned into place. I hope that this has made sense, and I hope that it gives you the courage to push through some of those stressful situations, and don't let that stress stop you from doing what you could be so good at doing. Join me again. The next talk, I'm going to be talking about exhaustion, because we are at the end of the year, and empty guilt. Look forward to it. Be safe, and please share my videos if you find them helpful and if you enjoy them, and I will speak soon. Bye.